Okay, we will call the Board of Education meeting to order on October 10th, 2013. The first order of business, as you see, Bruce likely isn't here. I am sitting in for Bruce tonight. He is on a business trip. So the first order is to review and approve the agenda. And we do need to make just a few changes, and I will make a motion that we will move under item 4, I, J, and K, that's the pool safety, Sacramento Library, and proposed construction. I'd like to move those up and follow item 4D. So I will make the motion. Could I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Good. Okay, as is our custom, if anyone wishes to speak.
You still need to approve the amended agenda.
Oh, excuse me. Okay, so we have amended the agenda. Could I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Done. Okay, as is our custom, we invite anyone who would wish to speak from the public to come before the board. Would anyone like to address the Board of Education? No, then we'll move along to the consent agenda. If you've had an opportunity to review the consent agenda, are there any amendments to the minutes or anything? No? Could I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we will move on to reports and recognition. The board chair's report, I really don't have one tonight other than just to indicate that the board has been quite busy on the superintendent search. We have seen, we started out with 10 search firms, both national and regional. We brought it down to 2, and we've interviewed both search firms, and as you can see from the presentation that we'll be having this evening, we have decided on Hazard Young and Attia Associates. And we're very pleased with this, and tonight you'll be hearing what they will be doing, a little bit of the organization and the extensive community outreach, both to the students, the staff, the parents, the teachers, so the unions, and the general public. And so we'll be hearing more about that later today. And so we're delighted. We're very pleased how it has worked out, and we'll hear about them this evening. So, Dr. Richards.
Thank you, Mr. Ray. First item I have for tonight's report is to announce that we're pleased to recognize that 24 Wilton High School students have been named commended students in the 2014 National Merit Scholarship Program. These commended students placed among the top 5% of more than 1.5 million students who entered the 2014 competition by taking the PSAT National Merit Scholarship Qualifying Test. I'm pleased again to recognize them. They are Alexandra Alper, John Beninati, Christina Brandt, David Brown, Casey Chase, Natalie Clark, Jill Dietrich Yee, Price Figarelli Reed, Keely Gaston, Mary Elizabeth Greer, Sarah Healy, Allison Heestand, Claire Hirsch, Madeline Hoffman, Kimberly Holgram, Roger Huglin, Connor Johnson, Christian Langholm, Kyle Miller, Isaac Pack, Angel Poiré, Dominic Sheffers, Jack Walsh, and Matthew Webb. It's really remarkable. A few weeks back, I announced that 11 of our seniors in the same group had been named as semi-finalists in the National Merit Program. They're in the top 1% of students in the country on this test. And so with the 24 names I just read off, that makes 35, which is about 12% of our senior class has ranked among the top 10% of students in the country. So we're really, really proud of them and appreciate all of their dedication and the work of their teachers and the support of their families. Second item I wanted to share has to do with the activity period at Wilton High School. During the course of the year, the high school plans several activity periods for our students. This year, there will be 4 and possibly 5 such periods. Tonight, I'd like to briefly report on the one held this past Tuesday. And without getting into too much detail, there were some themes for each of our classes. Ninth grade students, this was an hour block that students had, and we modified the schedule accordingly. The ninth grade students attend a workshop on Naviance, the software I talked about last week, and which many of you are very familiar with, and the student success profiles, or a presentation on internet safety by Scott Driscoll, who is a remarkable gentleman who had 24 years in law experience. And I heard him speak last year. Bob has brought him back because he really talks to our youngsters about the dangers of the internet and how they need to exercise real caution in using Facebook and other social media. And I've said, and it's very effective, and I think this gentleman has a lot of credibility, and we hope that that's a lesson that our young people take to heart. The 10th grade students attended stress reduction workshops. As you know, stress, and a lot of people think, well, how much stress could you be under as a high school student? But those of us who've had high school students know that there are many, many stressors that kids are facing. And we're really trying to find ways to help them recognize good stress versus unhealthy stress, and to help them develop some techniques to deal with some of their things that are stressors in their lives. So it's really, I think, a very practical opportunity that they have, and worthwhile. The grade 11 students attended either stress reduction workshops or a presentation on domestic violence and post-high school meetings with counselors. Grade 12 students attend a presentation on the senior internship program. As you know, we have significant involvement of our seniors in this, to start thinking about what they might do if they choose to participate. And they also had their annual class picture taken. The goal of these activity periods is really to ensure, and one of the things, as I was talking with Bob about this, to make sure that we ensure equitable access to various workshops, outside speakers, our counselors. So groups that didn't have one of the activities I mentioned will be cycled in the next go-around. There, as I said, there are going to be 4, possibly 5 such programs. And I think it's important also to note that these activity periods have really been planned with the idea of forging some connections to the work that we're doing with the advisory program, which meets more frequently. And I'd like to offer at this time special thanks to one of our social workers, Kim Zemo, and our very excellent associate principal, Rich Sanzo, the high school administrative teams, our psychologists, social workers, counselors, and teachers who are so committed to the mentor program and who also supported the activity program. So I think it was really hats off to the high school for a very valuable use of time with this program. So, thank you.
We'll move on to committee reports. Karen.
It's an old joke right now.
It is. Firestone, who is the manufacturer of the new Middlebrook roof, will be on site on the 24th, the morning of the 24th, to do their warranty inspection. And with respect to Miller Driscoll, we, at our last meeting with the architects, there were several areas, one being the increase in the number of special education students, and the other one being the need for perhaps another special ed resource room. And those items, we're going to have to amend our ed specs to include those 2 items. Cheryl had indicated at the meeting that there was currently a need for 6 special ed resource rooms, and Dr. Fred indicated that given the fact that the preschool population is now at 75, we should be adding an additional preschool classroom. So those 2 minor changes will be made.
Not so minor changes, though.
We don't know what the impact is going to be, but from just the textual point of view,
Yeah.
they're minor.
Okay.
So maybe we could get that on the October 30th agenda.
All right, Chris. Well, I'd just like to comment on my virtual participation at the Technology Advisory Committee meeting last Thursday. It was a good meeting. There was a discussion of the status of the summer installations, also the review of the Wilton team's participation at the ISTE. conference, and most importantly, breaking down into groups and beginning to look at the iPad Institute. And here I'd have to say that we have to thank the Wilton Education Foundation for making a grant to make this all possible. So thank you for a good job well done, Matt. Okay, we will move on to John, the superintendent search.
Good evening, members of the board, Dr. Richards. See many staff members and even some members of the public here. It's a pleasure to be here on behalf of Hazard, Young, and Atia. I have to say personally, it's a pleasure to be here for a purpose other than to watch my son's lacrosse team lose to you. An experience I enjoyed for several years in a row. It's also daunting. You obviously have appreciation for Dr. Richards. I noted the graceful letter that your board chair had written announcing Dr. Richards' intent to retire. You obviously have appreciation for his work over the years here. Perhaps you're not as aware of the appreciation for his work in the state, in the region, and indeed nationally. Jerry Richards has been an exemplar for other superintendents. So our task in helping the search committee identify his successor is not an easy one. But Hazard Young is experienced at this kind of challenge, and I'm confident that we can indeed help the search committee succeed in this quest. I'll run through a little bit about Hazard Young, but more importantly, I want to focus on the phase of this whole search operation that invites community and staff member and indeed board member participation. So that's really the heart of the presentation. We are here indeed to assist the search committee. We, myself, John Chambers, former superintendent of schools and 6-year veteran with Hazard Young now, and Debbie Raises, who could not be here tonight, sends her apologies. 18 years working with Hazard Young. Debbie was a board member in Scarsdale, board president indeed. She's now also the chair of the board at Lesley University. One of the reasons she couldn't be with us tonight. We've included our email addresses partly as a signal that we are very interested in feedback, both through the process I'll describe in a moment, and less formal. We hope that you'll avail yourselves of that set of email addresses. Hazard Young is a national firm. They've been in this search business for about 25 years, done more than 1,000 searches. Between Debbie and myself, I think we've done about 24. It's a national network of associates. There are 100 people like Debbie and me around the country. Many former students, superintendents, some former board members, working in 27 different states. We're very proud of that fact because it gives us a true national reach and an opportunity to gain information from other associates. Although Hazard Young makes a practice of assigning associates to a search who have some local familiarity. We're all parts of other wider professional associations, and we use those contacts in the search work in many ways. Hazard Young is now part of a larger group, Educational Consultants Research Association. I just love all the acronyms we have in this business. But Hazard Young is doing the search. That's the key. There are really 4 pieces to the search. A planning phase, a recruitment phase, a selection phase, and then, of course, the appointment. My focus tonight will really be about the planning phase, and we're in that right now, and about the recruitment phase. Obviously, selection and appointment come later. In this planning phase, we've already met with the search committee, laid out a calendar for our work, tried to be very clear about what we will need from the search committee and from members of the school community and what we will bring to the work. We ask 3 basic questions. They're very simple questions. We find sometimes there are complicated answers to these questions. We ask a question about the strengths of the district. And we ask this of every constituency. And of course, as we ask these questions, look for commonality across those constituencies. And a surprising degree of common perception does emerge. Not only about strengths, but we also ask, what are the concerns? What are the issues confronting the district? And not least, we ask, what characteristics do you think the district needs in its next superintendent? We ask these questions both personally. In fact, many of the people sitting in the room tonight will be asked to interview with us, either in a group setting or one-on-one. But we also provide an opportunity for people to give input without even meeting the search consultants. Already, thanks to Molly Rollison's good work, on your website is an online survey, which any member of the school community is invited to fill out. You'll be asked as you go to the website and click on the survey to identify what your role is in the district, whether you're a student, an administrator, a faculty member, a parent who has children in the school, or a community member who does not have children. We do that partly because we like to disaggregate the data across those groups and again look for matches, or with equal importance, places where the perceptions are not the same. We've found since we've put this survey up online in several school districts that we're actually getting more returns that way. It's relatively quick and easy for people to fill out. You can help us by encouraging anyone who expresses any interest in this whole process to go to the survey. In fact, you can both do the interview and the survey. We really put all those results together, both the personal interviews and the survey results, to develop what we call a leadership profile report. This is intensive work. Debbie and I will be in the district October 29th and 30th. I know that Molly and members of the search committee are already at work in developing a schedule, identifying very important groups and individuals for us to see and talk with. That schedule will be finished soon. We will be here intensively on those 2 days to talk to people both by invitation and in open meetings where anybody can attend who would like to be part of the process. So that planning phase and that collection of information is really important to the search work that comes next. It's also really important to help gain community buy-in for the process. Perhaps there are people in the community at this point who are not aware that Dr. Richards is going to retire, that you're going to need a successor. This is a way to increase awareness, a way to get ownership in the process to the greatest extent possible. And that's important at this stage for many reasons. One of them is, later on, you'll hear us talk about the importance of confidentiality around the actual candidates. So with the opportunity for people to have input up front, we hope they'll be understanding as we explain why we think confidentiality for individual candidates is very important. That starts to play out in the recruitment phase. Very soon, in fact, again, we've been bothering Molly Rollison and Gary Richards today with text for the ad that will appear very soon in Education Week. In the print version and also in the online version. That obviously has a national reach. It also does not cost as much as the New York Times. Years ago, you used to see these positions advertised in the Times. We thought that that would not be money well spent for your school district. We can reach the same audience or even a broader audience using Education Week. And a whole set of professional listings, mostly online now, some of them in print also. Those advertisements will encourage applications. Hazard Young has the most detailed application site I've ever seen in my experience as a school superintendent. People who fill out that application form have to be serious about their interest in the job. It's not only in great detail, but it probes, asks candidates to write, and eventually will provide detailed information for the board and the search committee on candidates who are selected for their review. But importantly, we find that the best candidates do not always come to a search like this through the application process. And in fact, our experience at Hazard Young has been that more often than not, the eventually successful candidate, especially in a district with high expectations like Wilton's, will be somebody who did not initially apply, but rather someone who came to the search through our recruitment efforts. We take very seriously our role as recruiters. We think that's the heart of the process. So we identify people who might be good matches, who deserve consideration by your search committee, and we call those people. Put yourself in a position, working away at your job, whether it's in education or anything else, and your phone rings, and it's a recruiter who is saying, we've heard really good things about you, and we have an opportunity we'd like to tell you about, and see whether you might be interested. People who are very successful superintendents usually say, when they receive that call, well, it's really nice of you to call. I'm very satisfied and challenged in my present position, but I'll give it a little thought. Sometimes that thought turns into more, and we'll enter into a dialogue with those potential candidates, which will eventually lead, in some cases, to a face-to-face interview with Debbie and me. We interview every possible candidate who might go before your search committee. We don't send anyone to the search committee whom we have not met personally and talked with in depth about the potential job. Nor do we send anyone to the search committee whose references we haven't checked. Now, of course, there's another reference check later on, significantly done by the search committee. But it's important for everyone to understand that there are hurdles before someone comes to the search committee itself. And again, we think that's the key to the service that we can provide to your school district. You've provided us a service by having such a great school district. The ad that we're already devising tries to give, just in a capsule form, some flavor of the quality of the Wilton Public Schools. It's been a pleasure to write it, frankly, because of that. A little bit more about Hazard Young, and then we'll go right to your questions. This is our guarantee page. Sometimes I look at this and say, wow, we have a lot of guarantees, don't we? One, we're with your search committee and the board until this search comes to a successful conclusion, even if that takes longer than anybody wants. We usually are able to help the process come to a conclusion within the time frame designated. But sometimes something may happen. We've seen cases where unforeseen circumstances made the search start over. And we're with the search committee until it's done. Another guarantee, call it our 1 year or 2 year redo. We say that if the candidate selected leaves a position during the first year, under any circumstances, or within 2 years if the same board is in place, we'll redo the search without an additional fee other than expenses. We also guarantee that Hazard Young will not consider as a candidate someone who was placed with our assistance within a 5-year period, unless the board grants permission for that to happen. And finally, a price match guarantee with our 10 competitors, pleased to note. So we have a set fee. The fee does not escalate based on the amount of time. It includes all of the work that Debbie and I will do from the beginning to the end and all the support materials. There are additional expenses for advertising, travel costs, but those are outlined at the beginning with a typical cap. There's also a list of why Hazard Young believes we can provide really good services to school districts. I won't run through all of that, except to note that we're proud of our ability to engage stakeholders, your constituents, in the process. Proud of our ability to get that confidential, hard to obtain information about candidates, and especially proud of the fact that we do that outreach work. We work at the recruitment. We're also proud of the fact that we don't occupy too much time at your Board of Education meetings. So it's up to you now whether you have questions that I can speak to or whether you would like to send me away until the 29th and 30th of March.
Thank you very much, Dylan. Come and sit down and we'll see if there is anyone who has some questions. I think that's, as we were going through the process of selection, I think that is, we had a long discussion on engagement and just how do you do that? And we talked about it for a long time. We discussed various alternatives, and really it wasn't until John and Debbie had come before us and began to talk about their approach to it that it all began to crystallize. And I think the 29th and 30th are going to be very important days for us as the committee, as the information is obtained through the interviews by John and Debbie. So for that, we're very, very thankful. Are there any questions?
No, I think I've spent enough time with you and Debbie in the last 2 weeks. You've answered most of my questions.
Well, I have to tell you, you're not quite done with us yet.
I know.
Part of what we will do on the 29th and 30th is ask to see every member of the search committee, every member of the board individually.
John, you mentioned the surveys that will be taking place on October 20th and 30th. Did you mention the community forum?
We do a community forum, which is an open meeting, usually in the evening. I think it's scheduled for the 29th. Is that
I think
right?
it's at 7 o'clock at Middlebrook.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you very much.
Just want to make it that point.
Debbie and I have not actually seen the detailed schedule yet. We're aware that several of you are working to develop it. We appreciate that.
Great.
And appreciate the plug for that meeting on the 29th at 7 at Middlebrook.
Thank you.
We'll give you the address.
We'll be there.
And I think I was surprised. I wasn't aware that the survey was already up on the website, so I'd encourage
I've taken
everyone.
it. I've already taken it.
Right,
Yeah.
there we go. So I'd encourage everyone to log on and take the survey. Any other questions? John, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
My
Thank
pleasure.
you.
We'll see you again soon.
Yes. Okay, so actually we're going to move on to pool safety.
One of the real, as they're coming up, one of the real advantages of having Dr. Giacchetti on our team is the fact that he has done in many different responsibilities, done a lot of policy work, and I think he's been really helpful in using his expertise to kind of work with our cabinet and principals as we organize some of the policies that we're going to either revise or create new policies to bring to the board for your consideration. So thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Gary. So we are resuming our work of policy review. Last week we received a information packet from Shipman and Goodwin. It included a CD-ROM of sample policies, but more importantly, it had a list of policies that were impacted by 2013, the legislative session. And they recommend certain policies be priorities that we bring to the board. So this evening's agenda, we have 2 policies and 1 regulation from among those recommendations. And all 3 documents were reviewed by and discussed with the board's legal counsel, and no action is required because this evening is the first reading. Prioritization of future policies is going to be a combination of the last data revision and also continuing on the list of Shipman and Goodwin recommended policies that we bring to you for to make sure that we're in compliance with the 2013 legislative session. Members of Central Office Cabinet and other administrators share in this work, And you'll see this evening, Dr. Smith will speak to you about the bullying, changes in the bullying policy and regulations as they relate to individual areas of responsibility. So we start with pool safety, and this is a pool safety plan. There is no requirement to have a policy, and although the board doesn't officially adopt a plan, we wanted to bring to you this plan so you could see some of the safeguards that are in place. Most people will say, well, why do we need this? Because we don't have a pool. But if you look at the definition of a school swimming pool, it's any pool that is endorsed for an activity, extracurricular, interscholastic, by the school or by the Board of Ed. So it's important that we do have this in place. The first page are definitions, and they should be very clear and very self-explanatory, the first being the most important. But the second page is where I think we have some relevance to the district. Under mandatory supervision, it's on the back side of the policy. And items C and D relate to our work here in Wilton. And Chris McDougall, who's our new athletic director, extremely knowledgeable. When I went down to speak with him last week about this, was all over this. And I invited him here to present and bring you up to date on things that we're doing to address items C and D. Chris?
Well, first of all, thank you. I didn't get a chance to meet you last month. I was fortunate enough to get to go to the football game that we did win.
But he did text me, and I scores throughout. I was paying full attention to the board meeting.
And by the way, we do have a football game tomorrow night against St. Joe, so I'll put that plug in there. As after I was appointed this position, when I was still actually at Brookfield, I was calling down to Wilton to make sure that we were above board with the new policies that were coming through from the state of Connecticut, and I was very happy to find out that we were. And basically what it is in addition to having a coach that is also a certified lifeguard or water safety instructor, there also has to be a lifeguard on deck that has no affiliation with the swim team at all. And the YMCA does do that. Anytime that there's any program that's going on at the YMCA as far as swimming is concerned, they have a lifeguard on deck that is not affiliated with the program that is going on. So they do have that as their policy. So we're way above that.
The language, qualified lifeguard who will monitor the school's swimming pool for swimmers who may be in distress. Is that state mandated language? It just seemed a little, or do we have a flexibility?
Well, that is basically what a lifeguard does.
I mean, we can't just say perform like regular lifeguard duties, like what, that doesn't address like horseplay in the water or anything like that. It speaks specifically to swimmers who are in distress.
Right. Well, if it was during practice, I would assume that the coach would have addressed the horseplay. At least I would hope so.
It just seemed to me that it was awkward language.
Right.
I suspect that most of the language here is through the statute. I can check on that, but this is the sample policy from Shipman and Goodwin. We reviewed that, made sure that it was consistent with what Chris's expectations were with C and D.
And I assume that the Y is aware of,
They are aware.
of the new legislation that requires
Yes.
this.
In fact, before this meeting tonight, I called my coach and asked him to review this, and he said that we were 1,000% above board. And he actually works for the Y, so I know that they're aware.
And will the districts where our swimmers go,
Yes.
this would be a good
it has to be,
universal?
yes.
Okay.
For every state or every school in the state of Connecticut.
We've talked about this a lot, but a volunteer, does a volunteer fall under a school employee, or is that only a paid employee? And would volunteers ever be involved in this?
Any volunteer that works with our student athletes has to be a state certified coach.
So would they fall under this definition? I mean, you list, who is, I mean, should we list volunteers under the definition of a school employee? I don't.
I
Which
would not.
definition are you referring
This
to?
is different.
Oh, I'm looking at the wrong one. You're right.
You're in the wrong
I'm in
policy.
the wrong policy.
That should be on.
That's it.
But I would imagine in swimming, now that you have the touch boards, you don't have, do you have backup timers that are
Yes.
parent volunteers?
Yes, occasionally those touch boards will
Malfunction.
malfunction during a race, and yeah, it's always good to have that backup timer, absolutely.
And those are parent volunteers.
Those are parent volunteers
Mhm.
usually, yeah.
Right.
But they wouldn't count for any of the official
No.
supervision
No.
that needs to be in place.
Right. During a swim meet, which can get chaotic at times, obviously there's multiple coaches out there, and they still have, I think actually they have a couple of lifeguards out there for a swim meet because they are chaotic. So,
And I would imagine the YMCA has very high safety standards
Oh,
that maybe even go
definitely.
above and beyond with this policy.
mhm.
Any other questions?
Yeah, just, it's nice to know that we are already doing what we're supposed to do starting next year, so. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll be back.
And we'll move on to the Cider Mill School Library.
Pleased to have one of our great assistant principals at Cider Mill School, Ellen Tuckner, here tonight to represent the school and staff, to talk about the recommendation that they would like to make to the board relative to naming of a part of one of our facilities. Ellen?
Thank you, Gary. Good evening. The Cider Mill community offers for your consideration the prospect of naming the Library Media Center at Cider Mill the Virginia A. Rico Library Media Center. We believe that Mrs. Rico meets the criteria for such an honor based on the tenets set forth in the naming of district facilities policy, which have been adopted by the Wilton Board of Ed. As you're well aware, nearly all of her distinguished 35-year career as an educator was spent at Cider Mill School. After serving the Wilton district as a substitute teacher for several years, Ginny became a full-time Cider Mill teacher in 1985. She was a 4th and 5th grade classroom teacher for 12 years. And during that time, Ginny also served as both math and technology instructional leader. She was appointed assistant principal in 1997 and was named principal in 2002. And she served as the principal for 11 years. Ginny was completely devoted to the entire Cider Mill community, and as a teacher, she was always open to new and exciting ideas to engage her students. As a colleague, she was often the first person staff would seek out for any personal and professional need. And these very qualities led her to her appointment as an assistant principal and subsequent appointment as principal. As the leader of Cider Mill for the past 11 years, she touched every student, family, and staff member who walked through its doors. Her commitment to their well-being was always the guiding factor in the decisions that she made. Parents, staff, and students knew that she would listen respectfully to their concerns and respond to each of them with her trademark calm demeanor and sound common sense. Ginny's commitment to the Cider Mill community was unfailing and was her great gift to all of us. We feel that naming this vital part of our school is a fitting honor to our colleague whom we hold dear and in the highest regard. We appreciate your consideration of this proposal.
Thank you very much. I can say one thing.